Those of you who were here last week might have heard this story before. The day came to an end, and Jesus was with his disciples, and they were at the edge of the lake. Presumably this is the Sea of Galilee, and he said to them, "Let's go across to the other side." And so they got into the boats, and it says there were several boats. So Jesus was in the boat, one of the boats with his disciples, and there were other boats following along. Now, I don't know how big exactly these boats were. I don't know exactly how big the Sea of Galilee is, but it was a bit of a trek to be going across the water at this time, and it was night. It must have been calm at the moment because they probably wouldn't have gotten into the boats in the first place if there had been any signs of trouble. But there they were, going out toward the middle of the lake, and all of a sudden, the wind started coming up and the waves were crashing over the sides of the boat and the water was sloshing around and people were being thrust from side to side. Jesus was asleep in the back of the boat. But the disciples were terrified. It was clear that they were fearing for their life. And you know what it can be like when you're on the water and the waves are crashing and you might have a little motion sickness and you're just afraid because you're out in the middle of nowhere and who knows whether you can swim or not. These guys were fishermen and they were guys and I'm sure they were trying to buckle up and be strong, but eventually one of them had to go back to the back of the boat and say, "Jesus, don't you care that we're about to drown?" And Jesus stood up and he rebuked the waves. And he said to the wind, "Quiet and be still." And as quickly as the storms had come up, the water and the wind were calm. As quickly as that storm had appeared, it stopped, just like that. And Jesus turned to his disciples and said, "What are you afraid of? Have you no faith?" And the disciples kind of looked at each other, and they were still terrified, but they were terrified for a slightly different reason now, because they didn't understand this power that Jesus had just demonstrated. They looked at each other and they said, "Who is this that can quiet the waves and the wind